All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to talk about something that a lot of people feel but don't always have a name for. It's that experience of growing up as the second choice, the one who was always kind of standing in someone else's shadow. And it's not about something terrible happening, it's about the absence of something. I mean, have you ever had that feeling? You're in a room full of people you know, but it's like everyone's looking right past you. If you've ever felt that sting of being present but not really seen, yeah, this is for you. And this quote right here, wow, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Because that feeling isn't just some old memory. It's something that can quietly weave itself right into the fabric of who you are, shaping how you see yourself and the world for years and years to come. So let's start with our first section, Living in the Shadow. And that subtitle is so important. It's not always what happened to you, but what didn't. The real pain here often comes from what was missing, right? That lack of focus, not being the priority, never quite being the one who gets chosen first. Okay, moving on to section 2, learning to earn love. Because this is what happens, right? When you grow up in someone's shadow, you start to believe that love isn't something you just get, it's something you have to earn. And there's actually some solid psychology behind this, which brings us to attachment theory. So what is attachment theory? Well, in a nutshell, it's the idea that we build our entire sense of self-worth based on how seen and valued we feel by our caregivers. It's that fundamental. And when that feeling just isn't there, a kid will do pretty much anything to try and find it. And that's what leads to this whole cycle of earning love. Maybe you were always being compared to someone else who was seen as better. So what did you do? You learned to overcompensate. You had to achieve more, give more of yourself. And honestly, you had to put up with more than you ever should have, just for a tiny piece of that spotlight. Sound familiar? Because as an adult, this pattern turns into that nagging anxiety you get whenever you're not being productive or useful to someone. The thought of just relaxing, it can feel totally wrong, almost unsettling. Which brings us perfectly to our third section, the adult aftershocks. These childhood patterns, they don't just vanish into thin air. Nope, they evolve. They become these powerful coping mechanisms that are still shaping how you act today, and we're going to look at 3 big ones. So what are they? We're talking about hyperindependence, a really deep rejection sensitivity, and that classic low-maintenance people-pleasing. All right, first up, hyperindependence. This one comes from a pretty simple and honestly a heartbreaking lesson. If you learn early on that your emotional needs are just an inconvenience to other people, well, you just stop showing them. You figure out pretty fast that the only person you can really truly count on is you. And here's the wild part, right? The world looks at you and sees someone strong and independent. They praise you for it, but you know the truth. You know it's really a survival mechanism, a shield you built to protect yourself from the sting of being overlooked again. And that's exactly why asking for help can feel physically impossible sometimes. Okay, next up is rejection sensitivity. It's like you become a human radar, always scanning for any tiny sign that you're about to be excluded or replaced. A text that's answered a little too slowly, a weird tone in someone's voice. Tiny things that other people might miss can feel like a huge deal to you. Why? Because it plugs right back into that old, deep pain of not being chosen. And number 3. This leads to that special kind of people-pleasing, the low-maintenance friend or partner. You learn to be easy. You just don't have needs, or at least you don't show them, because you learn that if you're no trouble at all, maybe, just maybe, you won't get replaced. The problem, of course, is that it's absolutely exhausting, and it often builds up this quiet resentment inside. So what's driving all this? What's the engine behind the hyperindependence, the fear of rejection, the people-pleasing? That brings us to section 4, the lie of replaceability. It all comes down to one single, powerful, and really damaging core belief that you picked up way back when. And here it is. This is the belief. I am replaceable. It's this quiet, humming thought in the back of your mind that your place in anyone's life is totally conditional, that you could be swapped out at any moment for someone better. And look, this isn't just some random thought. It becomes the very lens you see the world through. It dictates your confidence, the jobs you go for, even who you think you're worthy of dating. It can even make you suspicious when someone actually does make you a priority. Can it? It just feels wrong, unfamiliar. But this is where we turn a corner. This is our final section, choosing your own light. Because look, understanding why you feel this way is the first step. And it's huge. But it's not the last step. The goal is to get out of that shadow. And that all starts with fighting back against that lie and finally embracing the truth about your own value. Okay, and if you take away only one thing from all of this, please let it be this. Not feeling chosen does not mean you weren't worthy of the light. I'm going to say that again. Not feeling chosen has nothing to do with whether you were worthy. It was never, ever about you. It just means your environment failed. It failed to show you your own value. The failure wasn't in you. It was in the situation. It was a communication breakdown, that's it. Think of it this way. You were a masterpiece hanging in a room where nobody bothered to turn on the lights. And that's why understanding the why is so powerful. When you finally get why you're so fiercely independent, why you're so terrified of rejection, you can finally stop blaming yourself for it. You can start to look at these parts of yourself with a little compassion instead of shame. And that right there is where the healing starts. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Now that you know your value was never actually up for debate, what's one small thing you can do today to stop auditioning for your spot in the world and just claim it? It doesn't have to be huge. Maybe it's just stating a need without apologizing, or actually believing someone when they give you a compliment. So what's it going to be? How are you going to step into your own light today?